All right, so the October patch just dropped, and there wasn't a whole lot to get excited about. There wasn't any new crazy features, or the balance patch was kind of negligible. There wasn't very exciting changes there, but the data mines pulled through, everybody. We have so much to cover here today. Let me just give you an idea of what we're going through in this video. We are going to be talking about every single card coming out in December, as well as the Spotlight Cash schedule for December, and a few of the November data mine cards have been changed, and a couple brand new locations. We're going to cover it all here in this video, and that's why you got to snap subscribe to the Drewberry channel, because the first thing that I try to get out to you guys on patch day is the data mine coverage, because I think it's the most important information that you can get. This game is so expensive. It's very important to, kind of read and assess which cards that you prefer to save up for them, save those tokens up for them, save those Spotlight Cash for those cards. So that's what I got for you here today, and we're going to kick it off with the December Season Pass card, Sebastian Shaw. All right, so Shaw, I'm going to tell you right now, I think this is the strongest card coming out in December, which kind of just holds true to the way they've been doing new cards lately. The Season Pass card tends to be kind of cracked. It just ends up being the most powerful, probably because you got to pay money for it. It's just the way it is. But I genuinely think that this is the best card of this month. And overall, a little bit of a spoiler here, but I think December is pretty much a pass. We're going to get into it. But here is Sebastian Shaw, a 3/3. When this card permanently gains power, gain +2 more power wherever this is. So I'm going to go 4 stars because this seems like a very strong effect, right? 3/3, not too shabby. We use Surfer on this once. He goes to 5. He gets another 2. He's a 3/7. That's great value. But we also have cards like Nakia, who can give +1 while he's in the hand. He goes to a 3/4, but then his power increases by 2 because of his effect, and he ends up at 3/6. That's amazing. You look at Swordmaster, who discards a card that can kind of have upside, but people don't even run that because it's just like, you don't have control. But a 3/6 body is really strong. 3/6 Sebastian Shaw is fantastic, and you're probably building a deck where you're going to buff this once or twice, and it's just going to be cash money. And because it says wherever this is, we can buff it in the deck. It'll still get that +2 power. So we use Okoye. It's going to get that 1. And it's going to, when we draw the card eventually, it'll be a 3/6. You could even maybe Lockjaw cycle it out, and it's still going to retain that power buff. So I really like the upside with Sebastian Shaw. There's really nothing too bad about this. The only thing that I can think of is some counters like Shadow King and Shang-Chi, because quite easily, I think this could get to like being a 3/10, like just a couple of buffs, and it's going to get up there. So it's going to end up in Shang-Chi range, which is a bit concerning. And then Shadow King can just remove this power. I don't quite understand the permanently gains power text. I think that's like, if it's an ongoing effect, it's not going to help. So like Blue Marvel, Khazar, these sorts of things are not going to increase the power of Sebastian Shaw. But Shadow King can still remove permanently gained power. If it's not base power, then Shadow King can remove it. So yeah, I just really like the upside with this card. I think it's going to be very strong. I don't know if it's going to be all that fun. It's going to probably fall in a Surfer list more than anything. I could see that. So that turn 5, you can play Surfer, Shaw, and another card like Brood, and that's just cash money. But time will tell. So let's get to the next card. All right, next is BLOB. A 6/3 on reveal, merge your deck into this and gain its total power. Ongoing, can't be moved. So before, BLOB was datamined as a 3/4, and it had the only text was ongoing can't be moved. And we all thought that was trash because it was like, why would I ever decide to run this in my deck? Clearly, Second Dinner was like, yeah, we're not actually going to run with that. We're going to change it up. And he has a lot of variants because this card has been datamined since the beginning of Snap. At least the variants have, but not this effect. This is brand new. And it's crazy. It is so crazy, but I don't think it's going to be all that good. I'm giving him 3 stars, but I was leaning closer to 2 because there's a lot of variance here. You could probably look at putting this in like a Hela deck or something like that. I don't even know about Hela herself, but like the concept of having a lot of high power cards, Giganto, Magneto, Infinite, whatever. You got them in the deck so that your blob comes out and he absorbs all that power. That's okay, but that's going to help you win 1 lane on turn 6. So the way I was thinking about this is we probably want to get BLOB out as soon as possible. Not only is that going to maximize the potential of his power output, but then if we have the right cards in hand, we can combo off of him like a Taskmaster. So I could see a line of play where it's like Wave on 4, BLOB on 5, Taskmaster on 6. And that might be pretty potent, especially if we got a lot of high power cards in the deck. Now, one of the most OP things to have when BLOB is around is a deck tracker. In particular, maybe one that tracks your opponent's cards. Because if they're going to play BLOB against you, you might want to know what's potentially in their hand. If you're using BLOB, you might want to know what's in your deck. So that's definitely going to help out on the PC version. But regardless, I just don't see BLOB being all that great. And another thing that weirds me out is the ongoing can't be moved. Well, why do I care about that? I feel like that's just a thematic ad, but it just seems random and just not going to impact the game much or ever. Maybe occasionally if your opponent wanted to like arrow it, but other than that, I don't see why that needs to be there, unless that's just old text. Mind you guys, you got to keep in mind this is early data mines. This is a lot of this information is subject to change, so it very well could be removed or something could change some of the power. Who knows? But as a 6-3, he's probably going to easily get up to like 6'10", 6'11" in worst case scenarios. So you're probably going to do pretty well with BLOB. It's making use of cards that you don't draw. That's what I really like about this. On average, you have 3 cards left in your deck if you didn't draw anything additionally. So that's pretty nice. But there's a lot that could backfire here. Like maybe the locations end up making you draw, you run into a Cosmo. There's just it comes out too early, and then your whole deck is gone. Like basically Lamentis Wand. You gotta like play armor with this probably too, so it avoids Shang-Chi range. Just tricky. And then also BLOB being a 6 cost is just a weird character to have as like a big finisher. I just don't overall love it, but I don't hate it, and I see some upside existing with this card. But it is wacky. It is crazy. Look at that variant too. They're pretty funny variants. And then I thought Thanos might be good because you can just put a lot of stuff in the deck. So just increase the amount of things and the variance of drawing, right? Because maybe you don't want to draw those big cards. You want to draw stones instead. Maybe that works out. Who knows? What a weird card. All right, let's get to the next one. Next up is FIRESTAR, a 6/3. On reveal, each card you played last turn gains this card's power. So another 6/3 coming out in the month of December. Back to back too. And this one, I like even less. There's a lot that's awkward about this card. You have to play it after you play cards that you want to actually have their power increased, which is just awkward. Like I could see like an Iron Man, turn 5 Iron Man, then turn 6 FIRESTAR. But holy smokes, that just seems like Bast on turn 1 was a way better addition to your deck than FIRESTAR ever was. So maybe what we want to do is we want to buff FIRESTAR somehow. But then I'm thinking like cards that buff, really awkward ones are Forge and Shuri, and because how do you even manage? Like if you use Shuri into FIRESTAR, she gets to 6, and then she buffs the Shuri. That's the only card that you end up buffing. It's not all that great. You went 6/6 FIRESTAR and a 4/6 Shuri. You do the Forge thing. Maybe you play a couple other cards on turn 5, and you get them buffed up because FIRESTAR was 6, and then your Forge is 6, and maybe a couple other things. That could be okay, but then you're looking to set up on 5 for that turn 6 FIRESTAR, which might not help win the game? I don't know. It just seems a little bit awkward to me. And that's provided that we end up buffing this. We might not even have the opportunity to do so. And if it ends up just being a 6/3, there is not a lot of possibilities here. Not that I can imagine. You could look at like maybe Cerebro and Mystique after Ravonna being out there so that on turn 5 you can play those both. I have no idea. That doesn't seem that great either. Maybe we look at Magic. You create Limbo, you have another turn so that you can play FIRESTAR on turn 7 after you play some cards on turn 6. Even then, this just feels like stretching it. So the reason I'm giving it 2 stars instead of 1, which I thought about, but it seems pretty wild in negative decks. You flip this over, it's a 3/6, and then every card before that you played on the prior turn, you can give 6 power. That even could be straight up Mr. Negative if it's the first card you draw after you play negative to flip the cards in your deck. That's not too shabby. It goes from -1 to having 6 power. That's pretty great. Or maybe you got that Iron Man in hand, it didn't get negatized, or a few other really potent cards that you want to give a lot of power. FIRESTAR is going to help you out. So I feel like that is her best potential. And the reason I wouldn't give it higher star rating is because Mr. Negative decks are just really high rolly, a lot of fun, but just not consistent enough to be really meta definitive right now. And I don't think FIRESTAR is really going to help give that consistency. So I'm not too amped about this card. I feel like it's going to need a power buff. And that's the thing about this card. Every inch of power is greatly going to help it out, right? You go to 4, now you're giving all those cards you played prior 4 power, and that's going to make a big difference. As it stands right now, I'm keeping it at 2. Let's go to the next one. All right, now we got to talk about Havoc, and I know I'm probably going to trigger a lot of people with these star ratings, but guys, like basically what happens if I give bad star ratings, everyone thinks I'm underrating cards, and if I give good star ratings, everyone thinks I'm a shill and just talking up the cards for the future season passes, purchases, whatever. It's not the truth. Basically, these are my first reactions, these are my first takes. I just look at these cards and I say it how it is, how I think it is, and then I'm either wrong or right. Doesn't matter. Havoc here, I can't see myself being wrong about this card. This looks like absolute trash to me, okay? I just don't understand how this could ever be good. Here's what happens when you play Havoc on turn 2 as I perceive it, okay? Because you're losing 1 max energy every turn because of his effect, you're no longer gaining the +1 max energy that you would turn after turn after turn. Which means if you play Havoc on turn 2, turn 3 you're going to have 2 energy, turn 4 you're going to have 2 energy, turn 5 you're going to have 2 energy, turn 6 you're going to have 2 energy, making this probably the worst 2-drop in the game. Yeah, it gets to a pretty high power total, but it's still vulnerable to Shadow King, it's still vulnerable to Shang-Chi, anything like that. I just don't understand how the power output from this card is worth the offset of just not having energy for the later game. And let's say we use them later. That's maybe not so bad. That's where I see a little bit more potential. Using Sarah on turn 5 and then playing Havoc and a bunch of other things. And then if it's played on the last turn, right? If you only had to spend 1 energy, it's a 1/4 essentially. Or even if you had to spend 2 energy, then it's a 2/4. And that's not too shabby, but gosh, there's so many cards I would rather run than this. And then I thought maybe you want to use Viper. That could be actually really nasty. You turn 2 Havoc, you turn 3 Viper. And then your opponent's never getting energy. That's where I like this card. But my goodness, I just don't know if that's going to work out the way we want it to. That's the best case scenario. That alone could maybe think about putting it to 2-star realm, but that's like the only thing I can think of is locking your opponent in at 3 energy per turn, which seems really nasty, but I just don't know. I don't know if it's there. We've never really seen Viper shenanigans take off. Even the Hood Viper seems like a good combo. It's not consistent enough. It just doesn't come up in your games enough. So I just get worried about that, but it could be nice. And then I was thinking maybe Electra, you get a bunch more energy to help offset the losing the energy, but that doesn't seem very good either. So literally for me, it's Viper or bust with this card, and I don't know how else to make use of it. It just seems like such trash, which is really too bad because it's a really cool character and he's got really cool variants and stuff like that. I could see them maybe buffing the base power to some extent before it's actually released, but time will tell. Let me know what you guys think about these cards, man. I just don't quite see it with Havoc. But we got one more in December. Let's check it out. All right, and the last card that's going to be released in December is Selene, a 1/-1. Pretty spicy. You don't see that too often, so I think that's actually pretty neat. On reveal, afflict the lowest power card in each player's hand with -3 power. I think this is really strong, actually. I quite like this card. I'm giving it 3 stars, but I thought about going a little bit higher with the star rating, but I'm leaving it at 3 for now until I learn more, because one thing I don't know is if you have multiple cards of the same low power total, is she going to afflict them all? Or is it just going to choose one randomly? I'm leaning towards choosing one randomly, similar to like Iceman. We'll just choose one, that kind of thing. But if you afflict all, that would definitely increase the star rating of this card. Not that that would really pop up very often, but I see this being great with the goblins, right? Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, make your Green Goblin a -6, make your Hobgoblin a -16. Fantastic. Send those guys over, win some lanes. Easy. You could also use it with Viper because it has -1. Not too bad. Probably not all the best. And then probably one of the better applications is Luke Cage. So that if you do end up hitting a card in your hand that you didn't want to have negative power, Luke Cage is going to cut that off and your opponent's going to be afflicted alone instead. Seems really good, especially if your opponent's running like an Iron Man or just one of those like low power cards that you want to save for turn 6, like Hit Monkey possibly. You bring that to -1. That's pretty nasty affliction for a 1-drop. Scorpion used to be very, very popular. It's funny that he kind of fell out of favor because he was never changed. But he was the #1 2-drop for a while in December, January. And he would just give -1 to all the cards in your hand. So if your opponent had like 4 or 5 cards, you would get -4, -5. Well, this card, you're getting -3 for 1-drop rather than a 2-drop. So the value is definitely there. It's pretty nice, but you end up running this over other cards like I don't know, like Iceman or Korg or stuff like that, because they have similar effects in that they're 1-drops and inflicting disruption upon your opponent. I like the upside of hitting your own Hobgoblin or your Green Goblin or stuff like that. So that's what makes me very interested in this card. And I do love those junk decks. So that kind of makes me excited. So this would probably be my number 2 card of the month of December after Sebastian Shaw. Very interesting. And I do like seeing the junk decks get some love, which seems to be happening with this month. Okay, so that is the December cards for 2023. But the November cards, there's 2 of them that have had nerfs and buffs. Let's check them out. All right, so Martyr here has been changed. I'm going to be really quick about these because we've already talked about these cards, but she is now a 1/4 compared to previously being a 2/6. So she lost 2 power, but lost 1 energy. I don't know if that's a nerf or a buff, to be honest with you. I'm leaning towards a buff, but it is now within Killmonger range, which is kind of nasty. I like this card. I think I like this card a lot more than most other people because moving to lose you the game is just not going to happen very often. Like, it's not like she has negative power and she's going to move to literally bring you under. Like, she's going to move to hopefully a spot that's just fine. And then also, if there's a location that you really want to win, just fill it. Just fill it up. Make sure it's full so that Martyr can't move there. And then you're probably fine. So I don't feel like it's going to actually, the effect is going to hurt you all that much. So being a 1/4 just seems pretty good to me. You could also use 0 to get rid of that effect if you're really worried about it. And then we could look at buffing it up with Khazar. And then if you want to fill the board, you could use stuff like Ultron, Shauna, or anything like that. You can even use this with Elsa Bloodstone. The more you buff this card up, the more you give it a lot of power, the less likely it's going to move and lose you the game. Because it's going to be so much power, it's just going to win you the game no matter where it goes. I really do like this card. I think it's going to be a lot stronger than people think. But now being inside Killmonger range makes me a bit hesitant. I'm going to stick with 4 stars for now, but we could drop it to 3. You got to watch out for that. All right. So one more card we got to check out for November. Oh man, Gladiator got hit already. I mean, I told you guys when we Datamine talked about this card when it was first announced that this was the most broken Datamine card that I had ever seen. It's just wild. And I still really like it, but I am actually dropping a star because losing power on a card like this is a very big deal. So Gladiator's a 3/7 now. Used to be a 3/8. On reveal, add a card from your opponent's deck to their side of this location. If it has less power, destroy it. So losing a power point means that we have less chance of destroying whatever we're faced up against. Not too frequently, but it does hurt. It might happen, and that's going to suck. Another thing is that I really like this because Shang-Chi could come out and destroy whatever is opposing it after. So you play 3 Gladiator, and then if you don't destroy whatever it is, that means it had 9 power, which is within Shang-Chi range, and you play turn 4 Shang-Chi to destroy it. Now, the 8 power realm of cards in your opponent's deck might hurt us. I don't think there's a whole lot. I'm like thinking off the top of my head, like Crossbones. There's probably several others, but it seems kind of unlikely that people are running those. If it does happen to be meta, then that's going to be worrisome. It also is less power. So if it's 7 or 8, then we're going to have a problem. And there are a lot of cards that fall within that range. But I still love this card. It still seems crazy strong. Iron Man, Darkhawk, just a bunch of cards that could come out. You destroy them, no problem. It's happy days. So I still think Gladiator is a strong card. I think the nerf was actually quite justified, if I'm being honest. 3/8 was insane, the stat line for a good effect. And I do not think this is a bad effect. Like, I think most case scenarios, you're going to be just fine pulling out a card, even if it has more power, so that you can deal with it with some tech option. But regardless, I think this card is super strong still. Okay, so that was the November cards, December cards. Now we got 2 new locations that are going to come out in December, and I got the Spotlight Cash schedule coming up for you for December in just a moment. All right, so these are going to be the 2 new locations added to Marvel Snap in the month of December. We got Castle Blackstone. The player winning here gets +1 energy each turn. I love that. I really do love the racing locations that exist in Marvel Snap. It's just a little fun mini quest that is built in, and this one's pretty nice because it's just like, hey, I gotta constantly win this location to have that energy upside, and it could go back and forth depending on when you're doing your power swing. If your power swing is happening early, you're going to benefit from this energy, and maybe it just snowball out the game, or your opponent can steal it from you because you ramped a little too quickly, and then, you know, from there it's hard to take it back. Who knows? Very cool. I like this extra element. And then big implications for turn 6, right? Whoever's winning it by turn 6, the start of turn 6, is going to have 7 energy, which is going to be a big deal. Then you got the White Palace. Copy the highest cost card in your opponent's hand. It's essentially White Queen, just her effect on a location, reciprocal for both players. You get to just see what they got in their opening hand. It's also very similar to Daily Bugle. Daily Bugle is just going to take a random card from each player's hand and give them a copy. This is always going to be the highest cost card. Daily Bugle is just a fine location. This one just seems fine. Not a huge deal. You kind of get an idea if your opponent has their big threat or not. So good information, but in terms of like being a frustrating location, I don't think this is all that bad. So I like these too. Not too shabby. All right, and here is the Spotlight Cast schedule for December. Now, couple quick notes. As you're going to notice, December 5th to 12th, the first week of December, is duplicated. It's kind of weird, right? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards, but there's only 4 weeks in December. So I don't know what they plan on doing here. Maybe there's one card that actually shouldn't be here. Maybe it's going to be saved for a January. It's just like an early Datamine or something like that. So this is all very subject to change, but this is our idea moving forward. Also, all the brand new cards being Series 5, again, very subject to change. We saw that right away with the October season, that they were all Datamine to be Series 5, and then it was later announced like a week later or something that Man-Thing was Series 4. So I wouldn't get too heated over it. I'm sure one of these cards is going to change. I hope one of these cards is going to change because in my opinion, there should always be at least one Series 4 a month. But regardless, that is the variance, and that is going to be the bundles for the Spotlight caches and the new cards and when they're coming out. Again, I don't know what they're going to do with Blob and Sebastian Shaw, because it's definitely Sebastian Shaw is the season pass card. He's coming out that week. Are they going to start adding a new card in the week of the season pass cards? I don't know. That seems kind of wacky, but maybe not such a bad idea if they want to roll out like that, to have a 2 new card week. It's kind of exciting in a way, but that'd be interesting. So anyways, just take a screenshot of this if you want to use it as a reference point for when all this new stuff is coming out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I love patch days and I love covering Datamines. It's my favorite thing to do on this channel. So definitely snap subscribe if you want to keep updated with all the Datamine changes. I will keep you guys notified. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.